All right, Tal, while we're listening, how do you discover music? How do you find
Ooh,
these bangers?
good question. Uh, I love Shazam, and I
Ooh,
love even
you
more
discover
Shazamming,
on Shazam?
like in the real world using Shazam. And my favorite, my most satisfying moments are like a car pulls up next to you playing something, and you can like Shazam what's going on in that car. That's like, if I Shazam things that I'm like should not be easy, or like just before the light changes, or while I'm walking by a coffee shop or something. So
Man, I
I
haven't
I, I
tried.
rate I rate
I
my
ha
coffee shops by Shazams per minute.
Yeah, and I'll give one more quick tip here since we're talking about tech as well. You can add a Shazam shortcut. So when you like pull
Ooh, yeah.
down from the top of your phone, and it's way more subtle to just pick up on songs without being like I have this big blue app that's like listening to everything. Yeah,
Where's the speaker?
yeah.
Where's it coming from?
You know what I haven't tried to do yet is I haven't tried to use like ChatGPT advanced voice mode and have it and like play music in the background and ask it what song is playing. Like, do you think it would detect it? That's
Ooh,
like basically
there's a new
Shazam.
Google one too.
Man,
There's like a
like
Google Shazam thing where it's like you can hum apparently.
they would bake that into Gemini, I would imagine, like the Gemini
The
voice
pace
mode.
of change is too fast. One Shazam every 15 years is enough for me.
All right, man, the song ended. So sad. All
Yeah.
right. Well, welcome everyone to our session today. We will not be talking about music the entire time. That was just to get us warmed up. But I want to welcome my friends Tal and Aman. How you guys doing today?
Really good.
Good. Yeah.
Good.
For-
I'm
Yeah.
just glad that like our Lenny post didn't set people's cursor on fire and like no
Yeah.
yeah,
more secure than Claudebot.
for those who have not checked their inbox this morning, assuming everyone's probably subscribed to Lenny's newsletter, a beast of a post just went live today from Tal and Aman. I had the distinct pleasure of seeing very early versions of it, and I think it came out incredibly good. So I'd encourage people to go check it out. And for those who have been, one of the things we'll talk about today is obviously the way PMs are being evaluated around AI fluency, and I think that getting comfortable in Cursor and developing what Tal and Aman have been calling kind of like this AI product sense um, is table stakes for a lot of people in this market. So we're not going to spend too much time talking about that specifically, but I would definitely encourage people to go check that out. And congrats on shipping it.
Yeah, my promo for it in one line is like it's like the in the 90s there was like the put on your 3D glasses now for movies like when that came that's like the Lenny newsletter equivalent and I won't say more than that.
Yeah. Or like the Goosebumps choose your own
Yeah,
adventure
there we go.
style. Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that said, I think we have quorum to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Oh no, previewing. Okay, here we go.
Nice.
That's what I get for trying to be prepared. Okay, so yeah, today we're gonna do for those who have never joined a lightning lesson, these are kind of like free sessions hosted on Maven. This is scheduled to be about 45 minutes with 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. We're gonna we think of it as interactive, but more like backloaded interactive. So that means like, everyone's muted by default. If people post stuff in the chat through the session, we're not really gonna see it. We're gonna try to be really present in the conversation. And then at the end, we'll open up for Q&A. So if you are sitting on a question you'd really like us to get to, my advice for increasing the chance that your question gets answered is to wait until the end. And then ideally, if people can upvote or react to the questions that they want us to answer, that'll help us prioritize if we're tight on time. For those who, we'll do a little bit of intros on each of us, but I just want to start with some housekeeping. So the talk's going to be recorded, so feel free to do this in the background or to listen in the background or just like pay attention. You don't have to worry about taking notes. You'll get the recording after and be able to spend as much time with this content as you'd like to really soak it in. We're also going to share the slides. This happens to be a pretty slide heavy talk today relative to some of the other ones that I've hosted in the past. But that's just because we really wanted, like, there's a lot to say here. So I think you'll get a ton from rewatching that or consuming the deck. And then we will, like I mentioned, keep people muted just for recording quality. And you know, Aman, if you, so we realized like I had no way to make them co-hosts. So if they just need to mute for certain parts, they're gonna have to like ask me. So just people be aware that that's going on in the background, but hopefully it doesn't mess with the flow of the conversation at all. Um, yeah. All right. With all that said, let's get started. So AI fluency and specifically evaluation of PMs when it comes to AI fluency. Why does that matter? Okay. Um, I feel like if you look at every job description for product managers these days, or you talk to hiring managers that are looking to hire product managers, um, one thing is clear, at least like I spend a lot of my time in this space talking to candidates and hiring managers and also doing like building interview guides. And AI is kind of like ubiquitous throughout what people are thinking about. They're thinking about the implications of AI and the products they build. They're thinking about AI and the implications of their culture at work and how they get things done. And then they're definitely thinking about AI in the context of like how can they better solve the problems that their customers are experiencing and what they build and ship in the market. So no one is hiring a PM right now without thinking about AI in some sense. And ideally, they want PMs that are very AI native. And that's going to mean a lot of things. So we'll talk about, well, we're going to unpack that. That's kind of like the point of this whole session. But theoretically, the more the talent, the better the talent a company can accumulate, the faster they'll be able to move. It's no longer kind of like a game, a bottleneck about technology or the ability to like get as much coding done or make a technical breakthrough as it used to be. Um, Given that a lot of the hiring managers themselves have never been through an AI focused PM interview because maybe they've been in the job, call it pre chat GPT, or they've been in this job for more than 2 years, even maybe the first year of chat GPT, no one really was evaluating any of this stuff. So you could really think of most people kind of in the hiring position figuring this out as they go right now. There's a lot of experimentation and tinkering with how they might evaluate something they themselves never had to actually prepare for as a candidate. And the biggest takeaway that I think I have so far is if a hiring manager lacks clarity on what they're evaluating, it's unlikely they'll just kind of like happen to stumble into a good rubric for evaluating people. So it really does need to be an intentional practice for people to kind of get where they want to get. So with all that context, Tal, Aman, and I hosted a session a few weeks back about Meta's new Product Sense with AI interview. We're going to come back to this, but I want people to keep in mind we're going to do a little interactive session later in this call, and I want people to start thinking about which bucket of interviews this will fall into, and we're going to give the answer to what that counts as, but it's just an example of something Meta is doing that we'll want to give as a concrete um, case. Okay, so who's this session for? Hiring managers that are designing PM interview loops, recruiters who are screening for AI fluency in the PM candidates that they're looking for, PMs themselves who are preparing for interviews at AI forward companies and want to get a bit of a pulse on like what people are thinking about and what's happening in the market, and ultimately also leaders like founders, CEOs that are thinking about building their AI native teams. So I think there's really something in here for everyone. But I'd say the most actionable bits will probably be for hiring managers.
Ben, by the way, Aman is muted and can't unmute himself. We could leave him there. It's up to us. He doesn't. Oh, damn. Okay.
All right, Aman, I
I'm
guess
in
you can talk.
timeout. Yeah. Well, okay. I guess I'll go first. Awesome. Thanks for having us on, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here. Just by way of background, my name's Aman. I've been lucky in that I've been building AI products for most of my career, starting on self-driving cars and evals for self-driving cars. Worked on Spotify's machine learning platform, and now I work as head of product at a company called Erez, where we help with evals for AI products and agents. So very relevant to the building AI products part of this. And I'll hand it off to Tal.
Hey, everybody, I'm Tal. Up until a year and a half ago, I was either a founder or very early product manager at hypergrowth pre-IPO companies. And a year and a half ago, I went on Lenny's podcast as a guest, and we did nothing on the agenda had to do with AI. And found myself like sharing something that I was doing at work, and I thought that was like late to the party, and like Lenny spent a lot of time on it. And then after the episode, I was like, interesting. And that kind of made me realize that no matter how far AI had come, it was actually like so much of the value was like how we use it as PMs. And so I spent the last year and a half helping with that, focusing on that. Most recently, Aman and I started a course together where we realized that like how you use AI actually leads you to having much stronger intuition for building with AI, and all comes together really nicely. So yeah, we all work together.
Yeah, and then we all connected the dots on this collaboration last summer, where I was sharing with Tal and Aman what I've been thinking about when it comes to PM interview prep. I teach a course on Maven specifically for product sense and analytical thinking interviews, like the ones used at Meta, but a lot of other companies use them now. Like OpenAI is copying that playbook. Stripe, DoorDash have variants of the product sense interview. Um, and I kind of like posed a question like, how's this all going to evolve? You know, like I feel like these interviews have still really not changed in any way since AI came. So like, what's going to happen? And that got us just like talking pretty continuously, leading to, we did a talk about the Meta Product Sense one with AI. And then I think that really helped crystallize a lot of thinking that, um, like I kind of, the session is going to share a framework that I've been just like working on, but Tal and Aman have really helped me shape my thinking around this way of structuring interviews. And this is our first time talking about it in public. So I think I'm personally just like really excited, and if I'm honest, a little nervous to share it because I think it's not going to be fully baked, and but I think it's got a lot of good bones. So, how are we going to spend our time? So yeah, I think we're already deep into this. I'll quickly talk through the high level of the framework, kind of not burying the lead. And then we're going to spend the bulk of the session going through the framework. Tal and Aman are going to be subject matter experts in a couple different areas that I am not a subject matter expert on. And then we'll wrap up and do Q&A. Okay, so um, a sensationalist slide to get started. This is all developing story. Okay, so I don't want everyone to take what we're doing. We're like we try to be super intellectually honest about everything we do, but I think in this one it's particularly important to not pretend to be some kind of like definitive authority on the right way of doing these interviews or evaluating candidates. This is probably going to evolve every 3 months at this pace, maybe more. But I think people should feel like they're getting a really solid on the ground reporting snapshot in time of what's of how these dimensions for evaluation are shaping up. Okay, so high level framework. You got to think about interview design as a product design problem. That's like the fundamental principle that kind of everything else we talk about is going to be a double click into. And every decision you make in how you design your interviews should be intentional, and it should aim to gather the most important signals for your specific job while being really explicit about trade-offs. There's no perfect interview process. It's all about trade-offs, just like product decisions. There's also no single correct way to structure a loop. It really depends on the role, the team. You also don't want 5 of the exact type of PM on your team. You probably have some spikes, in some areas. So like it's all very team and role dependent. So I want to make sure people are very clear with that. And the goal of using a framework for designing interviews is to reduce the cognitive load, like the amount of, cycles you have to spend designing the interviews so that you could really maximize the time you spend on your real job, which is solving customer problems. I'm not saying your job as a manager is not to grow your team. That's definitely part of your job, but ideally you're growing your team in service of solving customer problems and creating business value. So I just don't want people to think that design, like interviewing people, it should be a full-time job because it really shouldn't. Okay, so within our framework, the way we want to talk about this is there's 2 high-level AI fluencies, fluency competencies is the way to think about them. And we want to spend a minute hanging out on definitions up front because we're really going to again flesh out the rest of this in the talk. You could think of the first bucket as using AI to build products. This is the bucket that Tal is kind of going to be our, subject matter expert on in today's session, which is really all about like using the LLMs and the agents to get stuff done, strategies, data, prototyping, research. Imagine all of the things that you have to do as a PM just to get product out the door. How do you use AI to do all of that? Okay. And then I would say the second bucket here is building AI products. And this is where Aman's going to be the subject matter expert in this session. And this is really about like getting, Aman has taught a course, prototype to production. It's kind of everything that comes with actually deploying large scale production AI applications to real customers in the market. Not every job is going to need that skill set, but I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about hiring for that skill set. So I think that's the area where AI, Aman's expertise around like evals, observability, and a bunch of other stuff is going to come in.
Ben, the second subject matter expert, has muted himself once again.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you want to remain muted, you're welcome to. You could always raise your hand too. I guess that's a Zoom feature. But anyways, thanks, Tal. You're gonna keep me honest. Cool. And just to further visualize how we're gonna structure this, because there's a good amount of slides. I want people to be clear. So we're gonna basically go row by row. So we're gonna start by talking about using AI to build products, and we'll go to building AI products. Now, what are these columns? Okay. So when you're designing interviews, you know, and this is just like me talking to candidates, like there's basically three high level buckets of what people, do in interviews. There's behavioral interviews. So these are your like hiring manager calls, your recruiter screens, your XFN interviews. There are live cases. So this is the stuff I teach in my course, for example, like product sense interviews, analytical thinking interviews, um, those types of things. And then there are take homes or presentations, like you'll get a homework assignment and then you have like a week to complete it or 24 hours or whatever it is, how the company does that. And sometimes there's a presentation, sometimes there isn't. But at a high level, these are like the three main types of, ways that companies are trying to get signal from candidates. And I think it's helpful to fit, the way you think about interview design into this general framework. Doesn't mean you have to have one exercise or one interview per cell, but it's you got to be explicit with which of these cells do you want to use. It's like a menu you could order from. Okay, let's keep going. Tal, Aman, anything so far? All right. Just while we're here, before we get into it, I want to let people know if you end up wanting to get help while we talk about the live case style interviews, you could use AI Fluency to get 10% off my course. You'll get an email after this with the link. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's been a real kind of like passion project for me to teach those specific interview types. They're not going away as far as I can tell. They're evolving in interesting ways. But I think if you're trying to get ready for those, would love for you to check out my course and potentially go deeper with me. And a lot of the insights that helped me shape my thinking around this came from something that I've been working on with my partner Mark, which is called Insider Loops. In Insider Loops, we basically interview PM candidates who are successful and not successful at top companies, as well as hiring managers and calibrated interviewers from the same top companies, and put together kind of like a master guide on what people should know about the interview processes at the companies, including pitfalls and things that work well, don't work well. The four companies we have so far are Stripe, Figma, Uber, and DoorDash, but we're working on more. So just to kind of let you know, these insights that we'll be sharing are kind of super well informed by many hours of looking at these types of kind of interview guides and building these types of interview guides. Okay. So the matrix walkthrough. So, all right, Tal, I'm going to set a timer. Let's try to bang it out in 13 so we have some more time because I think we're a little behind. Okay. So where are we? We're in this top left cell of the matrix. Okay, so we're going to talk about using AI to build products, and we're going to talk about what you can do here on the behavioral side. So the high level question you're trying to answer here is, has this candidate actually used AI tools to ship faster and better? That's what you're trying to evaluate. Typically, you could think of this as you could probably get this done in 45 minutes, and you'd want a hiring manager or a senior PM or someone like you really trust as a cross-functional partner to evaluate this kind of signal. So that's like the high level about this. We're going to go into, some example prompts here. So the types of questions you could ask are, like walk me through a time you used AI to solve a product problem, make a decision or improve a relationship, Or tell me about a time that, AI tools changed how you think about approaching the work. Like, what did you try? What worked and didn't work? Tell me about a task or a workflow that you couldn't have completed without AI. Describing a situation where you chose not to use AI and why. What's something you find yourself doing with AI frequently and turn into a workflow, and how have you used AI to improve your team's performance? These are the types of things that you can ask someone to get them going and really probe as a hiring manager to understand how they use these types of tools to get the work done. Tal, I'll just cover this quickly, and then I'd love for you to
Sounds
chime in
good.
and share some thoughts. So, if you think about like a rubric, like an example rubric you could use, like a very simple one, you could think of like three different dimensions here. One is the depth of usage. The second is their judgment around the AI tools, and the third being the impact, like how, like the actual results that they've been able to achieve using these tools. And strong signal can be things like, really being specific about the tools and the workflow. If you can probe deeper, it kind of like the picture gets more texture. It's kind of another way to think about that. Um, they can really articulate when AI was helpful versus hurtful and how they adjusted their approach. And they don't just take the first result that they get from the AI, but they kind of demonstrate repeated refining of prompting to get the outputs that they want, and then just being very concrete about connecting that AI usage to specific outcomes and results. So Tal, I feel like that's a lot of me talking, but I'd love to get your thoughts
Yeah.
on this section.
One of the important things I think to say here is that we've all, I'm sure many of you have heard of the term the jagged edge of AI, like it's like really smart in some ways and like really dumb in other ways, and that's changing. It's like it's getting smart at a higher percent of things, but it's still like surprisingly dumb at other things. And I think it's important to take that into account when you're evaluating somebody as a candidate or even setting expectations of people in a role. That what you want to look for is like you want to have these stories, these like let's talk about a story, let's talk about a time when, like try to focus people on a peak moment. Let's not evaluate them on an average or like a bad moment. Let's like say like a moment that AI really did its best. Like let's look at the best situations and like first of all, let's try to hone in on those cases. I think it's way more fair to people, and you can kind of filter out a lot of noise around like, what is the use case? Um, and yeah, peak moments. It's also I find myself saying this a lot, like fancy isn't a value. So if they're using Cursor versus ChatGPT project, I don't think somebody gets points for that. In its own sake. It's not like, oh, they've been, refreshing Twitter more or something. It's more like how do they use, like if they're using a tool, let's take that as a given. Within that, you know, how are they surfing that tool, right? Are they like overly doing this like theater of like writing this incredible prompt for 5 hours and then hitting enter and it's supposed to get a perfect result? Or are they just like diving in, throwing some context in, seeing that it wasn't great, iterating? That can happen or not happen in any tool, right? Like, are they kind of like frozen up and paralyzed? Or are they kind of like leaning in and happy to just try and see what works and not worried about the downside? Are they treating it as, like if it doesn't do what they wanted, are they treating it like a failure of some kind? Or are they treating it kind of, I think the best analogy is driver's assist or like Mobileye, where, if when your car beeps and something, it's about to hit something or something's in your like blind spot, right? And your car beeps and nothing's actually there. Nothing bad happens. You don't freak out. You don't swerve your car into the median just because it beeped, right? There's no downside to that. And if there is, it's amazing. It's incredible upside, right? Infinite upside if it keeps you alive. So like the same approach and the same mindset for using AI. It's like, can you focus on the only the good, don't worry about the bad. Like there's not like, oh, it failed completely at this. I think that's like the kind of mindset and you want to see people talking about when you go through the story. Um, yeah, I think by the way, there's also another dimension of this. This kind of gets like very multidimensional, and then I'll stop talking. Is like there's as a person, and then there's like context or AI as a team sport. It's like what do they systematize, like Ben was mentioning? What do they turn into something repeatable? Like are they thinking that way? So, but that's a few levels. So I'll pause there.
Sounds good. Also, Thanks for whoever drew on this. I just figured out I can disable annotation, but I don't know how to wipe it off the current screen. So, all right, so it's just gonna stay there permanently in the record as we keep going.
I think you can clear
Does anyone know
whiteboard potentially. If you
how do you
click on
remove that?
whiteboards, try to clear whiteboard potentially.
Clear whiteboard.
I'm in favor of keeping it. It could have been so much worse.
Let's see, annotate. Uh, this is, I have an eraser. Oh,
There you
there it
go.
is.
Yeah.
All right, we're tinkering live. Um, I am so happy that that wasn't like one of those erasers that you have to drag like in paint, like back in the day. I thought I was gonna have to wipe it. All right, let's
Great
keep
job,
going.
Zoom PM for that feature.
Yeah. All right, so Tal, I think I didn't
Yeah.
skip. This is the next slide,
This
right?
is so yeah, as we go into the next way of evaluating, which is the live case, right? A vivid image to keep in mind is Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky won the Nobel Prize in economics, and I think one of the greatest lines here is like, um, "Separately we're okay, together we're a genius," and like that's kind of the relationship with AI. It's like this gives everybody that opportunity, right? It's like, um, it's not going to be replacing you. It's not going to be doing it for you. It's not like you're just delegating. It's like one of the highest levels you can aspire to is not a utility, not a good Slack update writer, not a good Google, but it's like something that's making you smarter. And yeah, and we go to the next vivid photo. And really again, when you think of peak moments, this is not for me what using AI looks like all the time, but sometimes when it all works out and I've set it up correctly and I've invested in the context and all that stuff, I have moments where I feel like this, where I'm not even looking. I feel like I can pass the ball. It's gonna be fine. And hopefully we'll have more and more of these. So yeah, I just want to make this really vivid, like what success looks like, what you're trying to get examples of from candidates. Um, Go for it, Ben.
So you're saying don't hire LeBron James, is what I'm hearing.
I mean, if he fits the rubric,
Okay.
right? If he does well in the interview and especially the take home.
Okay.
I'll add one more, just like I'm actually curious what you guys think about this, but like it seems like a big part of this part of the interview is judgment on when to use the stuff and just as importantly, when not to. And that's sort of what you're trying to suss out and feel out. Is that like a fair assessment?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, it's really like just there's just table stakes about how people are using AI to get stuff done right now, and I feel like people that have been reluctant to like really embrace it to get the basic job done, I think are going to be at a severe disadvantage in interviews moving forward. This is my read. Yeah. Okay. Um, so as we talked about, there's kind of like a progression from behavioral interviews, which is like tell me about a time kind of stuff, to now let me see it. Okay, so like we're in a live case. You're gonna maybe be in a room for 45 minutes or like a Zoom room, most likely, with maybe a PM or an eng lead or a designer. Maybe it's the hiring manager, and they're gonna want to see how you use AI to get stuff done live versus just wanting to hear you talk about it. If you're like me, then when someone is screen sharing these days and you could watch how they get something done, you are learning so much about how they think and how they work in ways that are probably better than they could articulate it themselves, because it's like the implied behaviors and the real behaviors versus kind of like their stated behaviors. And I think this is really where I think there's a lot of magic to be had in these interviews, and I think that I'm personally like excited about the kind of signal that can come out of these. So some examples are, hey, like here's a product problem. You've got access to Claude or whatever the LLM is. Walk me through how you might approach this. Okay, so it's like when to reach for AI, when not to reach for AI. How do you prompt, right? Like all that stuff. It could also just be like, hey, like how would you draft a PRD for this feature? Use whatever you want. I just want to see how you think. Like I want to follow your process. If someone can't draft a PRD for a new feature, given obviously like sufficient context within a 45-minute time box, that's definitely like a red flag these days, just given the state of the tools. And doing so in a way that feels defensible, or at least like it's not just taking what the AI gives them. I do believe that allowing people to use their own laptop, I think is really important. Because they're going to be in their own like home court. They're going to have the tools that they're used to using. So you don't want them to trip up in an interview because you're forcing them to use a tool that they haven't used before. If the tools that they are using are, sufficient, meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Okay, Tal, I won't talk through these like last time. I think it ate up too much time, but yeah, I'd love to
Cool.
get your kind of input on this live case way of getting signal.
Sure. I'd also say for live case, especially for this topic more than like any other skill set you're evaluating for, because there's so much hype online and there's so much theater um, when it comes to AI, and there's so much everybody feels behind all the time. Like yeah, no more needs to be said. Everybody always feels behind. Everybody's always feeling like somebody else is doing it better and they don't know about it. And it's probably going to continue for a while. There's like a very big temptation or very big risk of people not doing what they would actually do, but doing what they think you want to see. And I think it's really important to like set the tone, like that you don't care about the hype. There's no like, there really is no right way. There's no like magic spells that you're looking for to see somebody use, or like start your prompt a certain way and structure it a certain way, and you have to use Markdown. Like all that stuff is noise. I think it may be true at any given time, but long term it's noise. And what you're looking for, right, is like reassure people like I want to know how you would honestly go about this, like actually solve this as if I wasn't here, because I'm not looking for what you think I'm looking for. And um and then you're looking for uh like Aman was saying, like, do they know when not to use AI? Are they also investing in themselves and building their own context, like not moving too fast, that they don't actually know what's going on in the thread and getting slopped, right? As a result, when they're communicating with AI, are they like leaning more into conversation, right? Than to some kind of template that they saw online in 2023 and haven't let go of, um, and very, very engaged, like are treating this like they got a junior intern, they're reading everything, um and can speak to everything, like they haven't lost the plot of what's going on in the thread, is like, because yeah, you can imagine there's a lot of different ways to use AI. You're not evaluating for speed, you're evaluating for like just good judgment of a professional using a tool, but it's still you're evaluating the professional.
Yep.
If anything else I would add about this, yeah, Amon, anything else you'd add?
I like there's a good question actually. Like, could you give an example of this? Like, it might be helpful to do a quick turn of
Mm,
something, if you have one off the top of your mind.
So like there's example questions, there's
yeah, yeah.
example behaviors. I'm curious like what kind of example we'd be going for.
Maybe the one on the previous slide we can do.
Mhm.
Yeah, so like drafting the
Yeah.
PRD for the
So like
feature,
drafting a
like yeah.
PRD, right? That's a great example. Like, candidate A might go in and literally write, "Hi, Claude, draft a PRD for X feature," right? That's an extreme case. Another candidate might be a little bit better than that and tell Claude, "I need to draft a PRD for this. Let's have a conversation about it. Ask me questions, get context out of me, right? Let's think through these things." A third candidate might take that even further and do that, but before they do that, they might say, I'm going to do some research on my own first, and maybe I'll structure a document of like what I'm going for, and maybe I'll ask the interviewer if there's some like stub fake documents or something I can use, maybe online, like to put into the chat as context along the way. Maybe I'd like spend some time being thoughtful of how I want to engage, just like I prepare for a meeting with a person. I'm going to be a little thoughtful of how I'm preparing with for AI. So there's different levels, right? Of like, and none of these are obviously there's like a spectrum here in this direction, but like what I said is not literally the answer, right? You want to see thoughtfulness.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I can think of like even two more signals here of like someone might think that they're being really clever by like firing off a bunch of clods at the same time. Let me ask it like a bunch of questions at the same time. There's some cleverness to that because you're accounting for the latency of these systems. So you're demonstrating that these systems take a while to respond. The problem is that you're in an interview and you have to then parse all of the output from Claude at the same time. So like this is probably an example of like someone who might try to take it too far and say, oh, I'm really good with these systems. I use them all the time. Let me do 5 different questions, come back with 5 answers. But how are you going to synthesize that to actually get through the prompt? I think is another example. Just to give a couple of examples for us to riff on here.
Also, I would
By the
personally
way,
be
yeah.
very
Oh,
curious
good.
in whether the candidate is choosing to type this all of this or they're using voice dictation because I feel like voice dictation is going to be way faster. So you've got a time box, you got to cover a lot of ground. Are you going to go slow and type it, or are you going to have like Whisper Flow or Willow Voice or one of the those apps? I think is going to be really critical. You could also talk to the AI and tell it, hey, like I'm in an interview right now. I need to come up with a PRD. I want you to help me create a really good prompt so you could even like use AI to help you come up with the prompt that you use to like work through the PRD and give it the context of like how deep you're trying to go for this context, which is what you do in a real interview as a human too. There's a lot of assumptions that you're not going to treat it as like an actual thing given that you're in an interview.
And
Yeah.
maybe just, oh, go ahead, Tal.
I
Go
was gonna
first.
say two things is like the as much as I want to say like who cares how they do it? Some people like to type, some people like to dictate. Let's be honest, dictation with Whisper just looks a lot better. Like it's gonna influence how people evaluate you, or it's gonna if you're an interviewer, it's gonna influence you. The second thing is um, the people putting in the chat like customer use cases like if you're talking about you want to evaluate when not to use AI, one thing you can do as an interviewer or hiring manager, you can say draft a PRD for this feature. By the way, here's like a CSV with MPS results categorized for this, or here's a user research transcript to see are you. It'd be really impressive to me if somebody does not use AI for that at first. If somebody first reads it and reads a good part of the raw data,
Yeah.
that would be really impressive of high
It,
level.
it's a good point. The hiring manager has a bit of a fiduciary responsibility from a process perspective to give what they deem sufficient context to the candidate for the exercise. And again, if they don't want to give context, and then part of what they're evaluating is navigating in complete ambiguity with no context, they can do that too. But just be mindful of the trade-off of you might be less likely to get something interesting.
Ben,
Right.
how are we on time?
To
We
Sorry,
yeah.
got
Aman, go ahead.
we got to keep going. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Aman.
Um, but yeah, that was awesome. I could talk about this for 3 hours, no problem. Okay, so the last dimension here is going to be kind of what we've been talking about, but in more of a take home. Okay, so I'm writing 2 to 4 hours here because, like, honestly, it bothers me when companies ask candidates to do like 20 hours of homework for an assignment. It's like really disrespectful, in my opinion. So I think if I was asking a hiring manager to like design a process that at least had acceptable candidate experience, I'd say 2 to 4 hours and time boxing it would be my preference. Note that some companies are actually asking this. I actually really like this. Some companies are asking candidates to tell them when they will have like a 3 hour block to work through an assignment. And then they will literally send them the assignment at the start of that 3 hour block, and they will ask the candidate to submit it at the end of the 3 hour block. So that way you kind of like have to spend 3 hours on it. You can't spend more. You could spend less, but you probably shouldn't. But that doesn't give people the open-endedness of some people spending 50 hours on the assignment and some people having like a bunch of busy life stuff get in the way, and only being able to spend 5 hours. Okay, so I think that's one thing that people can think about there. Um, and then examples here, just because I want to be mindful of time, Tal, should we just
Yeah,
like
let's run through that.
keep
Yeah.
going? Yeah, so like you could do a friction log, which is basically like what would you improve about this product flow. Stripe is a good example of a company that uses the friction log homework assignment. They have a lot of candidates go through like the Stripe, one of the Stripe flows, like Stripe Atlas sign up or Stripe checkout, or one of those. We cover that in a bit more detail in the Insider Loops guide for Stripe, but they are explicitly asking the candidates to talk about to include a note about how AI assisted them in the process. So they're certainly expecting people to use AI. They just want to know how they did it. And then there's a couple other here. You could ask people to vibe code something. Vibe coding can certainly tell you something about how someone approaches solving a problem. It's not production grade AI, which is what we're about to talk to next. Um, but and then you could ask people to de-risk maybe like a new feature launch by giving them some context and have them do an assignment. But the idea is like each of these things would probably be like very, very hard to go through without AI in the previous world within call it like 2 to 4 hours. but the expectation is now that people should be able to complete these kind of assignments if they use AI within a small time box.
And one also for take home, you want to be giving like assignments that bring out their PMing as well. Like you vibe coding is not PMing. Being really, really good just at the vibe coding part is like that's not the win. You want to see somebody who still shows really good PMing, order of operations, good judgment, maybe vibe coded something that is like a very small angle of it because that was the biggest risk, right? So basically you guys get what I'm saying. Like it still has to fit into framework of functional excellence.
Totally. Cool. Yeah. And here we're looking at the quality of the output, how they speak about using AI and their judgment along the way, like we just talked about. Um, okay. So just to close the loop on what we teased earlier, Meta's product sense with AI interview. If people want, you could go watch the full session I did with Tal and Aman from a few weeks ago. That would be an example of a live case that is gauging how you use AI to build product and work through a prompt. Although internally, some people are being told it's meant to gauge your ability to ship AI products, but it's certainly not the case yet. So there's that. That's what I mean by this stuff is messy at the moment. Um, okay, cool. Aman, now we're gonna hear from you. I'm so excited, and sorry for taking so long to get to this. Okay. So now we're in the second row of our matrix. Okay, so here now we're talking about building AI products, and we're going to go through those columns just like we did with Tal. So like behavioral, live cases, and take homes. I think in these cases, we're trying to gauge, have they shipped AI powered features to real people, real users on production? Um, a lot of people have not, right? Like, and I'll be honest, I never got to that kind of experience when I was doing full-time PM work, so I don't have that, and a lot of people don't. And I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to tell a story if they do have that experience. So this is an example of storytelling to get that through. Um, Examples here, talking about an AI feature you shipped and what made it hard, how you evaluated it was working well enough, how you handled AI behaving unexpectedly, and walking through trade-offs that you navigated along the way. And then Aman, I'm going to stop talking here. But the kinds of things you might evaluate are these types of dimensions. And I would just love to get your take on kind of like how you think about behavioral interviews when it comes to assessing some of these things.
Yeah, so I think this, the rubric we think about here is basically it is very similar to the behavioral interview rubric you would expect from a, product sense interview in many cases. It's like except, instead of it being a case, it's someone actually walking through an example where they had to make a decision, like, when to ship or whether to ship or not ship, for example, is a really classic one. This metric moves up, but the other metrics move down. How do you make that decision? And what you're really gauging for is their thought process and the context and how they PM'd this project. Who were the stakeholders involved? What was the goal of the product in the first place? One really powerful signal I'll call out on the AI specific trade-offs. Did the product need AI in the first place or not? Was this just something that the CEO wanted? Like put AI in the product and that's the motivation? Or was there a real clear reason why they needed to add AI into the product in the first place? That's usually like right off the bat, like you're trying to understand the motivation for how they decided to get to that final state, and then what were the challenges along the way. So that's one where I would definitely be looking for, can they understand when to use it, when not to use it, similar to how when we're gauging in the case of like Tal's interview as well, when to reach for it or not reach for it in the product. So yeah, that's like a bit of a high level. And then I'll add one more just on the eval side. Like this is, as Ben kind of pointed out right in the beginning, this is definitely an emerging field. I don't think hiring managers, even if you're at the cutting edge, they're not looking for eval experts to join the team. What they are looking for, though, is someone who can connect the dots between what evals are and how they relate and ladder up to product metrics, and thinking about eval metrics and AI eval metrics in relation to product metrics. Remember, they're hiring you as a product manager, or if you're a hiring manager, you're looking for a PM that understands this stuff and can communicate around it and can get into the weeds. But you're not looking for someone necessarily to go and like fully implement an end-to-end eval system in most cases.
That's a great point. Okay, so um, continuing to think through building AI products, but considering the way that you might be able to use a live case to get signal in this dimension, you could have a PM or an eng lead or some ML or AI specialist in house evaluate the candidate's reasoning on this front. Um, so here, some of the examples that we came up with are maybe asking someone to actually design one of these features, AI powered features, and walk through their approach, or talking about how they might solve a problem with a given AI feature, and diagnose and address it, and how they might evaluate that trade off of whether adding AI to a given product is the right call. Um, yeah, Aman, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I think on this one, it's again, you're gauging pretty heavily the communication skills around the technology. So there is a little bit of like crossover with having that initial sort of product sense of what this tech can do and what it can't do. So you're gauging that. That's definitely a really important signal here. I think on top of that, the other things you want to weigh are uh, what should the product experience look like? So how should the technology fit into the product in the first place? Is it a chatbot? Is it a background agent? Is it something else? When should like basically think about how does this PM map through the user's journey and where can AI layer in on top of that? And you get to see this like really beautiful sort of interaction where you get someone thinking through a problem journey just as they would in a standard sort of product sense interview, but now you're seeing how AI can change that user journey, and that's really the signal you're looking for.
Totally. Yeah, and then I think this is probably just a summary of some of what we've talked about. Okay, so the take home. Um, I mean, Aman, would you agree, like at a high level, the take home is almost just like larger kind of like investment of time from the candidate and an asynchronous investment of time to kind of try to get the similar signals to what we just talked about with the live case? Or is there anything that you would look to kind of evaluate or you think can be evaluated with a take home in this dimension that is hard to kind of get a signal on in the live case?
The ground truth I can share here is that for the most part, the take homes that I see in this space tend to be driven around feedback and what changes you would implement. So that's like the critique the AI product or product spec, or here's a broken prototype. Like, that's a great question. We literally will throw candidates at our product, which we sometimes know has dead ends or is broken because we haven't gotten there yet. We want to see if they can probe and find that themselves and then try to figure out what to do next. So it is a lot of like gauging again, can this PM think about product experiences, think about them all the way through with real products, take, time box this, spend 2 hours on it max, or maybe a couple hours max, and then think about what they would go do next if they were the PM here. That's been pretty consistently what I've seen across the board so far.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, let me call it one more really quick thing
Yeah, yeah,
here, Ben,
please.
actually, which is the use any tools part. That's really important. This also does have that bleed over with what you were describing earlier, which is like, when do they reach for the tools and how do they use them? Are they vibe coding everything, but do they understand at least how they got to the end solution in the first place?
Totally. Okay. I think we covered, and people should probably are seeing some patterns and kind of like the rubrics. And I think the idea is that if there's a set of signals you want to evaluate, like building AI products, the dimensions that you're evaluating should probably not be like super different across the different interviews that you have for that competency. You're just trying to get a signal on that competency in different ways. Okay. Some of these are going to be better than others at getting the signal that you need. So this is kind of like more of a superset of what you might end up wanting to do.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to throw your candidate everything here because you still want to gauge their like core product skills, like collaboration, all the things you would care about from a PM. But these are the ways you can layer in these questions, I think.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And sorry we had to go a little faster through your section of this, Aman, but hopefully we can hear from you a bit more in the Q&A. Yeah, so I'd love to give you guys the mic and just tell people a bit more about your course in case they want to kind of go deeper with you.
I'll take a first pitch. First off, I just noticed the dates are actually the dates are next week, so it'll be on Thursday and Friday next week, 2 day sprint. So I think we reused the slide from last time, but this is a lot of fun. This is actually like a passion project from Tal and I. Basically, what we were doing is we were sending like vo WhatsApp voice notes back and forth of like as we were both using coding agent tools and just seeing how amazing they've become and learning about them at the same time. We thought that it would be a lot of fun to just make that a collaborative environment for us to spend basically 2 whole days going from start to finish, learning how coding agents work and how you can implement some of these learnings in your own company. So it's meant to be really focused on people that want to compress this knowledge in 2 days. And it's very, I think like the main things we hear back and the feedback so far has just been it's rewarding to like get hands-on in the first place. So you can come with, you don't have to be technical. You can come with nothing. We'll get you set up from start to finish. That's our goal. Yeah, go ahead, Tal, if you wanted to add anything else on top of that.
No, I think the insight that we had was like I'm learning so much about how a full-fledged AI agent works when I use Cursor. Cloud Code a little bit, but actually Cursor is a little bit better for this, and its transparency and how much it shows its work. And I'm suddenly all of the concepts that you're hearing about all the time being used in production. Yes, it's not the same, but it's actually like very similar. Cursor is an agent harness. It runs on your computer, and watching it work, messing with it, using it for things you actually care about as a tool, like things you really need to get done. Suddenly, without a flowchart, without infographics, without slides, without anything, like you turn around, you're suddenly like you're like I understand a lot more than I realized, and things start to make sense. And then Aman's way more experienced than I am. I've stumbled into AI world with all of you, or most of you at the same time, right? Like, and yet I really felt. Like I was able to anticipate or by solving problems for myself, I realized that's the same problems that people, building product AI products at scale are solving. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, I'm feeling really in sync with the industry and announcements before they happen. I don't know how else I'll explain that. So what we do in this workshop is like we spend a lot of time using Cursor for like the two categories that we saw, like to build products and use it as product managers, but we also connect everything we do to how an agent works in production.
Yeah. You guys have taught me so much, so I'm pumped that you're bringing this to more people. And that Lenny post today is just a banger. Okay. Um, so to summarize, I'm not gonna, I'll include this in the slides, but I don't want to spend too much time talking through this. But there's basically some mistakes you want to avoid. There's reasons why those mistakes, kind of like hurt you in an interview process, and there's ways to mitigate those. So we'll include the slides after this. Um, and again, just like wrapping up with takeaways, and we'll do the Q&A. We marked some of these questions. Tal, thanks for dropping those in our WhatsApp chat. So we'll just kind of go through those. So the takeaways. The candidate experience is a product decision. So just how you design the loop is going to, sometimes you might get more signal, but you lose good candidates because they just don't have the time to deal with you. They have a lot of options. So just be mindful of how much time you ask people to spend, and which trade-offs you want to make. Using AI is not the same as building AI. As Tal and Aman just mentioned about their course, using AI a lot will give you a lot of intuition about how to build better AI products, but it is not the same as having that experience of shipping AI products to production. And you have to decide what's more important to you. Probably can't be two most important things. Everyone hears PMs, you got to make those trade-offs. You can think of the matrix as a menu, not a checklist. So, you want to have a focus loop that maybe covers 3 to 4 cells. You don't have to cover all 6 cells. I think that would be potentially overkill for an interview process. And maybe some of the cells you want to have two different interviews to cover. So you just got to figure out where you want to put more wood behind the arrow. And then I would strongly recommend optimizing for your must-haves. So where does someone really need to spike to be successful in your team with that given role at this point in time, and just test those things that actually matter. Um, yeah. And every interview does have a job to do. So basically, if there's two interviews doing the same job, I'd be like, do you really need both? Like, you should probably cut one. And if you can't tell me what job an interview is doing, I'd also say cut it. You're just wasting your time and the candidate's time. So just be very mindful there. And Q&A. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let's see. We've got the first question.
Yeah, so
What's
there's
the
there's
first question
a
we want to cover?
I saved some questions from that we're asking the chat at like different points so we don't lose them. Um and Okay,
Yeah.
I have to pick one. Quickly
I see people
prioritize.
raising your hand.
Sure.
we're gonna
Yeah.
prefer the written ones. So I just prefer not just given time. I don't want to let people kind of like ask their questions live. If that's okay. Feel free to drop them in the chat though. Yeah. Does either of you have one that you see in our WhatsApp that you guys want to pick up?
There's a question I would love to hear Aman's thoughts is when you talk about like why a feature, an AI feature got built, what if different versions of the question came up, which is like, what if it was the CEO told us to? I've definitely experienced that. We can all relate
Yeah.
to that, right? Like, what if you had to push back on an AI feature from an executive? Some versions of like the hippo, highest paid person, is the reason for the feature.
I've never heard that term before, but that I think that's a great follow-up question. I saw that in the Zoom and I was hoping we could cover it. Look, I mean, we have to reflect on the reality of today, right? Like CEOs are getting pushed by their board to ship AI features, whether or not they want to in themselves. The point that we're trying to get to, though, is can this PM understand and articulate the why? And that's what any PM should be able to do. Replace AI feature with any feature, right? The CEO wanted this feature. If that's the answer, that's not a great signal versus why did the CEO or why did the board or why is this right for the customer to do? And if not, how did you push back or how did you handle that objection? So I think that's really what you're looking for in the signal. It's not really the like, oh yeah, we had to ship this AI feature, because we just had to and the VP wanted it. Let's talk about it. Like I wanna agonize over the decision in this case, if that's the case. I want to get to the what, how did give me the five whys exercise on this. So, anything else you would add there, Ben or Tal?
Another question. No.
Okay.
Another question that came in is there usually a live case and a take home, or is it either look, there's companies like DoorDash that just don't do a take home assignment. And then there's companies like Uber that are known for their jam, which is like a very time intensive one. They say spend a few hours on it, but a lot of people spend like 20 hours on their jam prep, which is nuts to me. But that's kind of what it takes to really stand out right now. So I think you can, and then Meta, which is what I coach a lot, does not do any take homes and is arguably one of the most efficient interview processes I know of. It's like four case style interviews and one behavioral, all live, no take home, no presentations for most of the PMs, with some additional behavioral interviews if you're going into like L7 plus. So there's certainly not a one size fits all way to design these interviews.
I
Go ahead.
see, yeah, I see some good, a few questions around the same topic of like, um, if how do you interview for the building AI products part as a candidate, if you haven't yet had the real like company experience doing that, right? Like if you haven't done that, but maybe if you've done that as a side project, somebody asked, right? Like if I have AI experience in my own projects, but like it at work, like the variants of that question are coming up. I think I'm sure a lot of people thinking about that. Yeah,
I mean,
as a candidate, how would you
you
approach
can't
that if you?
lie, right? Like, so you're not going to make up experience you don't have. And like, I think the hard pill to swallow here is like, if someone's trying to hire someone that has that experience and you don't have it, you're probably not the right fit for the job. Like, there's a reason that's a requirement. But Aman, you tell me, like, if that's a
Yeah,
non-negotiable and someone doesn't have it, there's really not a lot of
yeah.
ways for them to kind of like make it up.
Totally. If this is a company on the cutting edge of shipping AI products, they're going to want PMs that have, in some way, shape, or form, shipped a version of an AI product that they can speak to. If this is a company not at that edge, but you want to get a job there eventually, there are companies hiring that don't require that experience and where you can build and develop the chops. They're looking for someone who's passionate about this area and wants to try to build something in the space. So you can reflect it's actually a question I ask even now. What are you working on nights and weekends? I'm not looking for like someone who is actually working on nights and weekends. What I'm looking for is what this person is building outside of work that is interesting, that they can speak to. In fact, that's usually more interesting than what they're being paid to work on in many cases. And I've like here are the craziest, most interesting examples that I still remember. I met a candidate about a month ago that had interviewed for us like 3 years before. And he told me about this whole project that he worked on for, predicting certain players in the NBA for his like draft, his like fantasy team, and like how he built it. And I'm like, and I told it back to him, and he was like, "Wow, can't believe you remembered that." But the thing is, those are the things that are memorable and are going to make for a good interview for both yourself and the interviewer. And so I just highly recommend like thinking about how to use this stuff outside of work. It's going to help you stand out as a candidate.
Yeah, and just one thing I'll add is like talking to hiring managers, like hiring managers are acutely aware there are just not that many people who have like strong production grade, like large scale AI deployment experience as a PM. So those who are choosing to make that a must have in their interview process just need to be mindful. You're really narrowing down your pool of who you could hire from, and you're competing with basically all of the companies that have infinite amounts of money to get that very limited talent. So I would encourage some hiring managers that think of that experience as a must have to really ask whether it's a must have or a nice to have as you design your interviews.
And one thing I actually found out about this week is I have a friend who was going through a process that the company was it was for a role that would be building an AI product, but they were not limiting themselves to people who had previous experience. They were looking for people who were using AI at work and had really good behavioral cases around that. And so it's one of the companies that Ben was like kind of that case where like they're aware of that not everybody's going to have that, and maybe the best candidate's not going to have that, but there are signals that somebody would be building their own good AI product sense that way.
Yep. Can you guys hang for like 5 more minutes, or you got to run?
I'm good.
Cool. If
Yep.
people need to drop, thanks for joining, but I'd love to add as much value to people as we can in the session.
Ben,
Okay.
there's a question I think I think you might be the best person to answer, which is like, um, how do you suggest we answer questions about reimagining a product given AI? So like how to reimagine an experience. The example they give is how would you redesign Coursera in the age of AI?
Yeah, so this would typically fall into either a take home or a live case, and I would consider that to be I mean, it's interesting. Is that using AI to do product work, or is it engaging your ability to actually deploy AI grade, like your experience deploying AI production scale AI products? I would say it's probably a little bit more in the first bucket because my guess is as an idea, the best thing to evaluate is how you might approach that. So I'd say maybe like a live case here. Um, could be something like, your typical product sense flow of setting the context for why you might want to think about doing something like that. What's your role? Are you a PM at Coursera tasked with cannibalizing your existing business? Or are you an upstart trying to kind of, eat Coursera's lunch with an AI native lens and why that might be interesting, and some commentary on the education landscape and why now is the right time, et cetera. And then you want to get into like thinking about segmentation. So like who's the different audiences that might benefit from something like this, and how might you pick a segment to focus on because you can't serve everyone to get started at once. And then how might you pick a problem or maybe like a set of pain points for an underserved segment that's worth focusing on within the audience for something like this, and kind of design an AI first or an AI native solution to that problem for the underserved audience that is strategically important to the company at this point in time, and just kind of create that nice arc at the end. And that's like the way I would generally approach at a super high level a question like that. The specifics are things we're not going to have time to get into right now, but things that I like my co-pilot would have a really good fun time, I think, like chewing on that. If people want to check out at benerez.com/copilot, I think that is a great use case for seeing what it comes up with, and I suspect it would come up with some interesting stuff.
And by the way,
Yeah,
what
I'll
we're
just
talking,
plus one.
oh,
Ben Ben
go for it, Aman.
has been
Yeah.
so helpful from helping to think about interviews. So I just wanted to like endorse and plus one that how to add structure to a company that's growing and trying to add more interviews to it and adding interview loops that kind of measure the product, this core product skill set. I think Ben has just been immensely valuable there. So I just want to plus one. Ben is super helpful here.
Cool. Yeah. Just because someone's asking for it, I dropped it, but not trying to overly
Yeah.
promote that. Although I'm very proud of the Copilot, to be clear.
What worked
Okay. What
out
other question?
really well.
Yeah.
What worked
Go
out really
ahead.
well about that, by the way, is the question was actually about like as a candidate, but I think you nailed it because it actually ties back to the Facebook product sense with AI, which is what they're evaluating there is not about AI products. They're evaluating product sense,
Product
right?
sense. Yeah.
That's the idea. And the answer there, even though it has the word AI in it, it's a PM interview, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
like the answer
Don't
there,
don't
the
don't
AI
let
is a
the
red herring.
wording. Yeah. Like just you can take the suggestion from the interviewer to use AI as a constraint for what you come up with in the solution space. But I think you really do need to ground to Aman's earlier point. Like, if the CEO says put AI in it, you still have to be able to come up with a really compelling narrative on why AI is well positioned to be the form factor for the solution. And those kind of live cases, I think, give you the chance to demonstrate that you could do that.
Yeah.
Because you don't
And if you're
choose
gonna
what to
say
work
like,
on in the case, right? Like it's like the interviewer is like the CEO in the simulation. So that there's like build it, and you're like, okay, I guess I gotta like think from first principles, like why would I build this, and how would I approach it, and who is it for, and what does it do, and why is this the right form factor? So it's kind of like a
yeah,
condensed way to get all that signal.
yeah, if you're gonna say build an agent or you're gonna build an AI product, justify the why and be able to stand up to the like how it's gonna work.
Yep. Any other questions here that we wanted to tell from our WhatsApp?
I think there's a few more questions around like how do you build things in your spare time? Do you put that on your CV? Do you start your own thing? I think I'll say what I'm seeing from the side, and Aman, Ben, tell me what you think, is like it's kind of like AI kind of reset a lot of things, and it's reminds me back when before I had anything that like any kind of like formal experience, and it was like, okay, how do I get that? And we're all kind of experiencing that too, right? Like no matter how much experience you have when it comes to AI, we're all being reset. So what would you do, or what advice would you give somebody coming out of university, right, or switching careers? Side projects, volunteer, help out, startups, early stage employee, start your own thing, right? All these things where you can a little bit more strategic, but quickly build up that leverage that you have for other
Can
areas.
I add one more note there, which is that applies to experienced product leaders too, by the way. I follow a ton of experienced PMs. I know a ton from the FANG companies of the world. They are all doing the same thing. They're all posting their weekend projects, like at least the ones that are
Yeah.
adjacent to AI or want to be kind of known to be adjacent to AI. And so whether or not you're at the cutting edge, I just want everyone to know like it is a big reset for everyone in the space, even if you're in AI, and sharing what you're working on actually shows that you're thinking about it versus and it doesn't have to be like fully baked thoughts. It could be like, hey, I tried to set up CloudBot this weekend and it didn't work. Does anyone have tips on how to make it work? Right? Like that's the type of stuff that is at least showing that you're like in the dialogue thinking about this stuff. So whether you're experienced or inexperienced or just trying to get the job in the first place, I think that advice applies to everybody.
100%. And if people want more tips on kind of like how to get noticed by hiring managers, I hosted a really good session last week. I did not do the majority of the talking like in this session with Nikki Skarstad from Duolingo and Hillary Gridley, who recently left Whoop as the head of core product. But they shared like tons of nuggets on like how to get noticed. And if you're interested in more of that, that's also on Maven. You can just look for that session. I will link that too in the follow-up email. Wow, nice. Tal, you are 2 steps ahead of me, maybe three. Cool. I know we are already 10 minutes over. So, any closing thoughts, Tal and Aman, from you two as we kind of wrap up this session, and anything you want to leave people with we didn't maybe talk about as much?
I can share like a quick note that it definitely feels like at times that there's so much happening and it's happening so fast. Hiring managers on the other end feel it too. What's I think important is just how you frame and show up to the interview as well, like being excited and ready to think about this from like a first principles perspective and viewing AI as just as any other technology that is really transformative and going through a moment doesn't mean that you throw everything at the wall and say it's AI, right? So I just wanted to kind of like underscore that note. Um, it's we're still I think people are still looking for those core skill sets that make us human, and we're still building products for humans and agents, but we need to think about this from like a product first principles perspective. AI is only going to be as good as the data in it, and we're curious what you bring to the table. What's your unique perspective? So that's all I'll say about that.
I'll say everybody feels like they're behind. Everybody feels like somebody else is doing it better. Everybody feels FOMO. So on one hand, like you're not alone. On the other hand, I would say the just focus on like diving in, get hands-on, use it for real things in real work, in real life as much as you can. Try to build things as much as you can. And even if it's not like the latest, fanciest thing, that would be so much more meaningful and interesting and valuable in life, and definitely in an interview, than anything in your Twitter feed or LinkedIn feed or anything like that. Just there's no there's yeah, everybody's making it up, and the more hands-on you are, and the more real stuff you're doing, the closer you are to the asphalt. Like, just be confident in that.
Cool. Well, thank you both for taking the time. And I know it's been a really big day for you with the Lenny post going live. So hopefully you really, a lot of people get the value I think they're going to get out of that. And this is related but completely different. And yeah, we will share, or I will share the recording for those who couldn't stick around for the whole thing. We'll share the slides. I saw a request for the transcript. Now you're thinking about how to use AI. I love it. I think the transcript should be fine to share. I don't think there's anything in the transcript that was not already said in the recording, so I'll share that as well. And yeah, we'll link to Tal and Aman's course, my course, Copilot, and any of the other resources like the Getting Noticed lightning lesson last week. So with that said, I hope everyone has an awesome week, and yeah, we'll talk soon. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Aman. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Ben. Yeah. Thanks, guys.